allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Steph, can I just say a few?
Certainly.
Well, I just would like to thank all of you for agreeing to serve on this, and some of you have been on this before. And thank you for doing this up to now, and again, agreeing to serve continually, and all of you new people. You know, tourism, we talk about economic development in St. Genevieve, and not that we have a lot, but this is certainly one area that is unique to us, and an area that, you know, the city invested in a few years ago and decided to put money into and marketing effort into. So, you know, there's Farmington can't compete with us when it comes to this as far as what we have here, and Perryville and all the other communities. So we've got something unique here, and it's something that we need to grow. All of you realize, because I know that's one of the reasons why you decided to serve on this thing. So we're not going to make everybody happy. There's been different thoughts of how tourism ought to be held or handled in the last 20 or 30 years that St. Genevieve's decided to do anything with this. And I know you're not going to make everybody happy, but hopefully we can go in the right direction and keep things going in the right direction. So, again, thank you all very much for deciding to do this, and good luck.
Kelly Fowler,
Yes.
Robert Mueller,
Here.
Jan Bruns,
Here.
Beth Caldwell,
Here, with apologies for walking in late.
Stephanie Grumminger,
Here.
Dina Kreitler, Laura Oliver,
Here.
Michael Hankins,
Here.
Jack Dunsey,
Here.
and Joe Steiger. We have a quorum.
Okay. I want to go ahead and read.
Can't approve minutes because that board no longer exists.
Okay. Oh, Dana's here. Okay. Sorry. Have approval of the agenda.
I shall move. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Ms. Young. Can you go ahead with opening remarks?
Okay. I want to just try to create some perspectives for this initial meeting of the board. Most of you know I've now been here about a year, and one of the early things that I did was I attended a Tourism Advisory Council meeting without really knowing what the Tourism Advisory Council was. After the meeting, kind of several of the members at different times kind of expressed some concerns that the Tourism Advisory Council lacked direction. So I started kind of talking and thinking about it, and I talked to the former city administrator who kind of questioned the role of the Tourism Advisory Council, and gave serious consideration as to whether we needed to continue with a Tourism Advisory Council and its relationship to the Tax Commission, and there were all these issues. But in the form that it was, it wasn't really serving what I call a legitimate purpose. And when we say legitimate, I mean politically legitimate, a purpose that was kind of generally accepted in the community. And so I went to the city codes and ordinances and discovered that it didn't exist. There was no authority in the code for the Tourism Advisory Council to be there. So we revised the city codes, authorizing the mayor to establish standing committees that would, once appointed, continue to exist, as opposed to an ad hoc committee, which he already had the power to appoint for specific purposes for a limited period of time. And then we thought about who ought to be at the table and why. and that there needed to be a concise set of bylaws that establish the purpose of the committee, the rules for operation, and you'll be reviewing in those today. And the reason I thought it was important is because, as the mayor has said, tourism is sometimes a little controversial topic for city governments to engage in. It's hard for a citizen sitting in their living room looking out the window at a hole in the street to understand why that money that is being spent to promote tourism isn't being spent to fix their pothole. And I get it. I understand that. But as you know, I think you know because you've decided to sit on this council, tourism is an industry. And it's an industry like Eric Scott is an industry. It's an industry like the hospital is an industry. And the dollars that are generated from citizens coming to St. Genevieve and consuming food in our restaurants and buying goods at our shops generate tax revenue without demanding of the city the support of significant public resources. When a citizen moves to St. Genevieve and buys a house, they put kids in the school. And the fire department has to be available to fight the fire. And we've got ambulance services and police services. And all of these things are demanded because the city wants to, and the elected officials want to preserve a quality of life in the community. When a tourism comes, the level of resources that need to be present for them are significantly less. Not non-existent, but significantly less. And so the city benefits, the citizen sitting in his living room looking out the window at the pothole benefits when a tourism comes to town because that visitor reduces the need to raise revenue to fix that pothole in the street. So I hope the citizens understand that. But at the same time, there are stakeholders who are directly influenced by our success or failure in promoting tourism. And you are the stakeholders. You're among the stakeholders, beyond the stakeholders of the private citizen. So I concluded, the Board of Aldermen concluded that having an advisory council was important. We could sit around and make decisions and maybe do a good job, maybe not. But having citizens who are willing to devote their time to advise the city and the tourism director on the direction that we should go is important. And it's important because hopefully in the eyes of the community, the efforts then of the city to promote tourism are valid. And they're valid because it comes from you, not because it comes from a marketing professional or a city bureaucrat. So I think this is an opportunity to take kind of the next step. And as the mayor said, I share his debt to you for agreeing to serve here. So we've distributed bylaws. There's no specific item to review these bylaws. Sorry. Where?
Under new business.
Under new business, election of, there is an item. So we'll delay reviewing the bylaws until we get there. But I do want to draw your attention when we do that to the purpose statement, because it was crafted with some thought, and it's been endorsed by the Board of Aldermen. Your bylaws had to be adopted by the board before we could proceed. And I'd ask that in your deliberations from this point forward that you remain conscious of the purpose and to the greatest extent possible try and stay focused on what we're doing. One of the observations that I have, and I think others who were there had about the Tourism Advisory Council meetings that preceded these, was that they tended to kind of wander a little bit. And there was a lot of discussion about a lot of things. Some of it was very productive. Some of it was like the same thing we talked about last week. and we need to try and focus our energies and make progressive steps. One of the things that comes to mind is, the administration of the tourism department is kind of a government function. We've got salaries, and we've got lighting, and we've got maintenance on the building, and I mean, there's things that we do that are important, but they aren't policy. They're the day-to-day things, and I don't think that the purpose of this board is to concern itself and take time to discover whether we have the right phone service. But if we had the wrong phone service, and getting a better phone service would free up dollars to put into marketing, now then it becomes an appropriate thing for the board to consider. So I don't want you to get bogged down with the details. I'm already bogged down with them, so you don't have to be. But if a detail is, if we're not using resources in a way that allows us to do the most marketing possible, then tell us, because I think that's important. So, that being said, my little spiel was, I again appreciate the fact that you've agreed to do this, and I think Stephanie and I have had a couple of kind of lengthy conversations about the opportunity this represents. So I look forward to it. Thank you.
Any citizens to be heard? No. Thank you, everybody. The mayor's expressed his thanks, and Martin, I would like to as well. I really appreciate it. I think this is a good group of folks who have represented a cross-section of what tourism is in St. Genevieve with the restaurants and the stores and the homes. So I'm very excited. Wineries, obviously.
Bed and breakfast.
Everybody know everybody?
Yeah, is everybody familiar with who is sitting at the table?
While you're at it, could you ask them to say who they represent?
Oh, absolutely.
That would be great.
Yeah. Let's wait till Stephanie sits back down. No, you're fine. It's okay. Let's start with Beth.
Beth Caldwell, my mom and I own Station 2 Cafe at Main and Merchants.
Kelly Fowler, and I have the Show Me Shop.
Bob Mueller with the Gibor House.
Jack Downsey, Tax Commission.
Steph Greminger, I work in the marketing department at the hospital.
Mike Hagan's Tax Commission.
Jan Brons, my wife and I own the Inn St. John Beauvais, and I'm involved with the downtown renewal project.
Laura Oliver, I am the St. John County representative.
Dina Braley, the Chamber of Commerce representative.
Carl Bullock, I work for the city, and I'll be keeping the minutes.
Okay. So with that, thank you, everyone. I appreciate your time. We want to, in the packet that I gave you, you also have a set up a copy of the bylaws.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's okay. Better to get over prepared. I have my report. In the future, I'll just kind of toss it all together in the financial report. That way it's just one time through. But in here, in this packet with the letter on the front, I have the visitor count, just the February 2012 expenses, and comparing to the fiscal year 2011 February expenses. Copy of the line items for both fiscal years. And then, in addition to that, the tax revenue that we have received going back to 2003, and then what we have received so far in fiscal year 2012. Very excited. This year, the weather has blessed us, and we've had quite a bit of traffic through the Welcome Center. In January, we saw an increase of 18% over fiscal year 11. February, we're at 20%, and March is looking to be the same as far as foot traffic through the Welcome Center. Now, this is not exclusive to all visitors to town. We have people who come to town who've been here before that don't stop at the Welcome Center. So these numbers are not a hard count of the actual tourists that come to visit St. John. Marketing expenses, I have not done very much. I've limited the amount of marketing that we have done over the winter, simply because last year we had a lot of expenses and didn't have a lot of turnaround. People don't like to travel. A lot of the businesses in downtown are closed. This year we also had limited times for historic homes to be open. So in an effort to not promote the town and have people come and have negative experiences because businesses were closed, I opted not to have advertising or much advertising. There's limited advertising. But even despite that, we still have had good numbers. We've got a good increasing numbers heading to the website, which on the table I have the web report for February. I only printed 3 because it's in color and ink is expensive. And it goes so quickly. But fiscal year 12 has been completely allocated for the year. I'm currently working the city's fiscal calendar. The state, okay, I'm going to take a step back. All right, so I currently work on 4 budgets over 3 fiscal years, or fiscal time periods. And at any given point in time, I am working on 2 time periods for the same budget. So ultimately, I play around with about 8 budgets at any given point in time. I'm either executing, creating, or finalizing with reports. The state co-op, they begin their year, it's July 1st and runs to June.
They don't know what the state co-op.
I'm sorry?
What is the state co-op?
Oh, the state cooperative is, the Missouri Department of Tourism offers a grant program, and it's a co-op grant. We have to, and it's a matching grant. And City of St. Genevieve has participated in this project for many years, and the application process begins in December. That's how far ahead we are as far as working on the next coming fiscal year. The process, we involved with the advisory council to craft the marketing plan, to look at where to put the funding, and utilizing the guidelines given forth by the state. We produced the marketing plan, which we'll look over here in a bit. One thing that we have to be aware of and make sure that we have it clear in our marketing plan. St. Genevieve, the City of St. Genevieve, is the designated marketing organization by the state for the entire county of St. Genevieve. It is not just the city. So when we write the application, when we write the marketing plan, we have to include the county. If we don't, we risk losing our designated marketing DMO certification and losing that up to $25,000 matching grant. Right now, there's a certification process, and we are certified for a $25,000 match. In order to get more, there are certain benchmarks that we have to meet in order to qualify for a higher matching grant. And right now, we don't have it. We don't have the rooms, ultimately, is what it comes down to. There's a few other items that we don't have, but the biggest is we don't have enough beds to qualify for a larger return. I'm drawing a blank. So ultimately, and then, so that's the state. Does anyone have any questions about the state co-op grant? It depends. We're supposed to have information by the end of May.
What time of the year do they award the grant?
Yeah, well, I would say May, June, but that's not, it's even in question. Right now, yesterday the House approved their version of the budget for the state. It now goes to the Senate, and then they're going to review the budget, and they're going to make their changes, and then they're probably all going to come together and decide what goes, what stays. There's no guarantee that this money is even going to be there. If the state legislature decides not to fund the program, then there is no matching grant. So it's not a guarantee that we'll have it. First, we have to get through the hurdle of the budget being passed at the state level, the governor signing on it, and then there's a committee, a statewide committee that reviews all of the applications, and then they decide and determine which grants are approved. And even specifically, they'll go line item by line item and decide what fits with the program, what doesn't fit with the program. And for example, last year they wound up pulling 2 items out of the grant request because we didn't have certification for the business meetings and for the sports groups. So we weren't allowed to do that advertising through the grant. The city budget runs October 1st, January 31st. And for I don't know how familiar anyone is with the grant process. That's not where it ends. There is reporting that I have to do quarterly. Each ad has to be reviewed to make sure it meets the requirements by the state. We have to use a specific logo. It has to be a specific size. And then on top of that, I track how effective each ad is. At the end of the year, I have to provide a report to the state that they in turn put together with all the other DMOs, and then they provide their annual report to the legislature for funding for the following year. It's a very intense, methodical, detailed process to go through, and it's time consuming. So when it gets to be October, November, in addition to all of the events that we have going on and everything else, I am completing the budget. I'm working on the report. I'm working on the upcoming fiscal year, which is 2 years from where I'm at, plus I'm executing the regular state budget. So there's a lot going on with just that one source of funding. Then we have the city, October through September. And this is a process where I am already starting on it. I hope to have, at least for the marketing portion, an idea of where the money is going to be spent and how it's going to be spent to bring to you guys for review. Once the events start here at the end of April, things get really crazy, and the budget process for the city begins June. So I'm trying to be ahead of the game. I'm trying to be ahead of the curve and have this information done and ready, so that way when I take the budget to bring it to Martin and then to review to the Board of Aldermen, I have a good, solid, complete package that's been well thought out and crafted. Then the city budget represents not only the Welcome Center, but also the Tax Commission. So I'll also be taking a marketing plan not a marketing plan, an action plan of advertising entities to the Tax Commission for their review and approval. Then we have the county funding, and the county funding does not start till the calendar year. They run on January through December. And I just finished doing that, and they awarded $5,000 again this year. So they've just started fiscal year 12, but fiscal year 12 is already completed as far as marketing. The money.
Grant marketing.
I'm sorry?
Grant marketing? Or,
The grant is complete. The grant was done 3 months ago.
well, I mean, you said fiscal year 12 is done
For the grant,
for the grant.
and all of the funding for the city has been allocated.
Allocated, but not spent.
But not spent. Well, the city funds have been spent. The county funds
No, that's true.
have been allocated. The Tax Commission has all been allocated. All of the funding is approved by them for fiscal year 12.
Can we stop for a minute?
Certainly.
Mike and Jack represent the Tax Commission, and for those of you who may not be familiar with what happened, that the city adopted, for lack of a better term, a bed tax, lodging tax, which generates money every year. The statute under which that was done requires that there be a tax commission to be the stewards of that money. And they then decide how that money gets spent. And that was the only money available for tourism for quite some time, until the Board of Aldermen allocated from the general fund money that would be used to fund to the director's position and pay for some marketing. This year, the Tax Commission agreed to, rather than have these independent budgets going on, was to make a major portion of their money available to become part of the city's marketing plan, so that it ensured coordination of the effort. They don't have to do that, and maybe next year they won't want to do that. That'll be their decision. But that's what they did this year, and hopefully, I mean, it's going to produce a better effort overall. This group has to be working with and coordinated with the tax commission, which is why when we wrote the bylaws, they get 2 seats at the table. Thank you.
So, and, yes.
Why don't you explain to them so they understand the fiscal years and the grant years, so they see that the problem that you contend with is that you have multiple budgets overlapping.
Oh, that's,
starting in-
yeah, that's,
You didn't explain that the grant starts July 1. You explain that to them so they understand that part of your stuff is falling in one year and then another year, and budgets start for the city start October 1. So explain that to them.
right. So the state grant starts July 1st, runs through June 30th. The city starts October 1st, runs through September 30th. The county money begins January 1st and runs through December. The county funding, though, has to be spent by September 30th because of the budget cycle with the city ending on September 30th. Otherwise, we're having to pull money out and put it back in, and it doesn't really make sense to do that, especially when we're heading into the slow time of year. Those dollars are better spent within our season. So in addition to that, I'll be working and executing the current year, writing the upcoming year, and working on analysis of the prior year. So there are a lot of budgets and a lot of juggling that goes on to make sure that everything is being allocated correctly. And this is one of the reasons why when I bring you my plan of action, which is where those marketing dollars are going to be spent, as specific as which publications, why we're choosing those publications. I like to have all of that mapped out and contracted at the beginning of the year, so that way it's done. Don't have to worry about it. It's just a matter then of thinking, when is this ad due? Do I need, make sure we have it done, make sure we have the proper information, and getting all that information out according to the schedule of each publication. I have found that helps simplify the process, just because there is so much going on at any given point in time, outside of the budgets and outside of the actual advertising. Still have a center to run on a daily basis. But, so fiscal year 12 is complete. All the funding has been allocated. It's done and in the can. Fiscal year 13, the marketing plan has already been written because we had to have that submitted to the state by January 31st. And you have a copy of the marketing plan in the application. And in there you have a copy of the marketing plan for fiscal year 13. You have the responses to the application. There's a budget or a grid line, and that's where all of the funding is going to be spent or is planned to be spent. And then there are in the back copies of the ads. They want to see what our artwork is going to look like. So we have that that finalizes the back half. What I'm currently working on with the fiscal year 13 plan is setting up a request to go to the tax commission, and then the budget marketing dollars to be spent for the Welcome Center budget marketing line. So that's where I will bring to you my recommendations for your review, listen to your recommendations and ideas, and then hopefully have the marketing allocated soon so that we can have that ready to submit to the Board of Aldermen. But I'll bring you, for the city, and I'll also take to the Tax Commission, a budget grid similar to what we have in the state program. As you read through the marketing plan, you'll see a focus on promoting not only St. Genevieve and not only the county of St. Genevieve, but promoting the state. That has been, with all of my discussions with the Missouri Department of Tourism, in meetings, in webinars, in conference calls, they are really wanting all of the designated marketing organizations to promote coming to Missouri. We want that outside money, those outside dollars coming in. So you will see a heavy promotion of bringing people from out of state. They want advertising in out-of-state markets, and that's you'll read that in that marketing plan. And I wanted to make sure you understood the reason why we have that is because of the state and keeping them happy, essentially. You know, making sure that we're following their plan. One of the things that in the marketing plan, you'll see what our demographic, who it is that we are reaching out to. And when I compare it to the state's profile, it's very similar. So it's good to know that we're meeting what the average visitor to Missouri, regardless of where they go, it's very close. We look primarily to females, age 45 to 65, own a vehicle, homeowners, average household income of at least $75,000. That's basically who we are trying to attract. Women make the decisions. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just looking at one of the strategies out of the package. If you go into the marketing plan, page 7, it just has the breakdown of our demographic.
Page 4.
Target markets. I guess I should have done front and back. That would have saved paper. The other thing that we're wanting to go after is leisure group tour operators. These are folks who would bring in people by, oh yes, Jack. Oh, I'm sorry. If you got it. Page 7. Oh, I'm on page 7, target markets.
There's 2 sets.
2 sets.
Yeah.
The first page 7 in this packet.
Under SWOT analysis. Just on that, I found it.
Yes, under SWOT analysis. Has everyone found it? Okay. So primary market is females and or couples. 300 miles of St. Genevieve, average age of 45, own a vehicle, homeowners, average household income of at least $75,000. That is very similar to the state. The state doesn't break down by mileage.
Or as a point of reference, describe markets that are within identify markets that are within 300 miles of St. Genevieve.
That would include Indiana, all of Illinois, a good portion of Kentucky, Tennessee, Arkansas, Kansas, Iowa. So anything that's
Memphis, Little Rock, Kansas City,
Chicago, St. Louis,
Springfield,
Terre Haute, I think. I have a map I can bring next time.
It's just sometimes we don't realize how
Far.
many things we're within 300 miles of.
So the state profile does not specify a specific mileage, but this is where the state's a little bit different. They have 2 major airports in 2 major cities, so they're able to expand outside of the driving demographic. Though the majority of, yes?
This is a good time to explain about 50 miles.
Oh, on the grant, thank you. The with the grant, we are required to advertise outside of 50 miles. We cannot use any of that funding to advertise in Festus, in Farmington. The state wants there's a 50-mile radius that we have to go beyond. So St. Louis is approximately 55, so we are able to advertise in St. Louis and not violate that requirement by the state.
How much of the advertising budget is available for within the 50 mile? I recognize the state has to be without 50 mile, but do you have monies for advertising within the 50 mile region?
In the city budget and with the tax commission?
How much is that approximately? We've got 25.
It varies. It varies. It really depends on with the city. This for fiscal year 12.
I hate that answer.
I'm sorry. Well, I was going to explain in depth.
Okay. It's not going to get done. Is it? I don't know. Is it going to rain? I just don't know.
Well, you obviously put something in the budget.
Well, yes.
How much of the budget advertising would have been non-co-op related?
Well, the co-op budget is a completely separate line from marketing. It has its own line, so that way there's no commingling, no confusion. It has its own separate line in the budget. Marketing, the Board of Aldermen approved for fiscal year 12, $25,000. So that was for all of our advertising, regardless if it was within 50 miles, outside of 50 miles, and that's not a lot of money. So it's...
If you get 25,000 from the state, you have to match 25,000.
Right.
If you get 21,000 or something from the tax commission, 25,000 from the city, so you've got about, let's see, maybe about 21,000. Because you need the 25,000
Oh,
to
you mean-
match.
Well, we spend the 21,000, and because we spend the 21,000, we get 17 whatever, or that's we get 18,000 from the state.
Okay, so we don't get the full 25.
No. They approve.
You're able to raise that.
And
Right.
and then so the general fund expenditure is 25,000. The grant is
This year was 39, 30, 17.5.
17.5 from the tax commission.
That's 22.
But you can't lump it together. It's not lumped together. It has to remain separate.
Oh,
And you can, for the grant, you can spend money across the river, even though it's not 50 miles away. Like Belleville, it's not, and they go by the crow flies almost rather than, the state does rather than driving, but they understand that to get over to the other side of the river, you have to go to the bridges, so a little leeway on that one. So if you spend money in Illinois, you can spend it a little closer than you can, but you can't do Perryville or Farmington or anything like that.
so dollars available for marketing from any source over any period of time is this total.
Right.
Some of it's got to be spent here, some of it's got to be spent there, but that's the order of magnitude for marketing.
But
It is those funds that the bylaws suggest this board should provide direction.
I guess if I added up, 34,000 has to be outside the 50-mile region of your total that you get. And about...
no, up to
8,000 would be available with inside. It's about 37.
Yeah, I was going to say, no, the state completely take that out of the equation.
I know.
That's not even in. The 25,000, which is a separate amount that was allocated by the city, is what this board will provide direction for with advertising. Any funding provided by the tax commission, they approve the marketing that's done with theirs. Of that 25,000 that we had for fiscal year 12, we could spend anywhere we want.
Still get credit from the state for having made the expenditure.
Right. That we have, and that's just to show that we have an established marketing program and that we still qualify for certification every single year, that we're not just relying on the co-op for our marketing. then it kind of gets back to, for tourism, you're wanting to bring in outside dollars. So you want to be careful how much you spend within that 50 miles, because are these folks who would have come here anyway? What is your opportunity cost? Are you spending dollars that could be better spent elsewhere? One of the markets that I've tried to get into is Memphis. They're right on 55. They're likely to stay overnight because of the drive, and they have a similar interest in demographic just by their proximity, location, history. They're heavy in the arts, so it's a town very similar to St. Louis, which is a good market. And so trying to get them to be a feeder market where they're, sending us information, or not information, people would be coming in. Did that answer your question? Okay.
I don't think so, but I'll come back.
Did you have a question, Jack?
No, I don't think it does, because the question was, what's the non-budgeted, non-co-op budget dollars?
Well, that will be
And we don't know
that will be your decision.
Wait,
Yeah, it's not a set figure, is basically right.
the non-co-op budget dollars are 25,000 from the general revenue, $17,500 from the tax commission, and $5,000 from the county.
Of that,
But he was-
17,000 has to be used for matching
No.
co-op.
No.
Okay. Because we spend $25,000, wherever we spend it, the state will accept our application.
And so only the 17,000 that we get from the state has to be without the 50.
No. See, okay, this is
That's why.
this
I'm
is why
confused.
I have so many things. This is a pretty intense. We have 4 funding programs. One, we have the state, and for fiscal year 13, I requested 49,000 and some odd change. Half of that comes from the state, half of that is general revenue that we have already determined with the prior Tourism Advisory Council. Then we have the city budget, where the Welcome Center for 2012, we had 25,000. We don't know how much we're going to have for fiscal year 13 because we haven't gone through that process yet. And how that money is allocated, that 25, or however much we have for fiscal year 13, that's what the board will come in and, I'll bring in recommendations, and then you guys can decide and make your own recommendations, and then we can move from there. For fiscal year 12, it was 25,000. That money was allocated across a variety of markets. Some of it was used within the 50 miles. Majority of it was outside of the 50 miles. So there was a small percentage. There's not a hard dollar amount that we use or a hard percentage. It went to basically trying to focus in when we have events and if we could get really good deals. That was how we determined. So there wasn't, and there isn't, and even for fiscal year 13, unless you guys decide you want to use 10% of however much the Board of Aldermen provide on the Farmington paper, the Festus paper, that'll be up to you. Then we have the third funding mechanism is the Tourism Tax Commission. For fiscal year 12, they allocated $17.5, and they decided where that money was going to be spent as far as what advertising. Then there's the county, and I took a budget to them and a request. And so,
Perhaps it would ask them questions and understand better.
okay. Well, yeah,
Come
so
back.
for fiscal year 13, the advisory council will work on the marketing line of the fiscal year 13 budget. And I'll bring to you, and I'll have the media kits so you guys can take a look at the demographics of each publication, and then, talk amongst yourself and decide. My goal is to have that at the March meeting, to have that set up and ready. I'm sorry. In the April meeting, have that ready. I'm advertising for summer, so I really don't know what day it is. To me, it should be jour de fête. So I'll have that at the April meeting to start review and to start working on, so that way we can have that line item set and ready to go when the budget season starts up with the Board of Aldermen. Another thing that we'll have to keep in mind is a contingency plan. Even if we ask for a certain amount, we're not guaranteed of getting that dollar amount. For example, I requested $25,000 from the county, and they were generous enough to fund $5,000, which, is kind of expected, that you're not.
Who decides on that fund?
The tax commission, the county commissioners, sorry. So that will, if we request for the city budget $25,000 and the Board of Aldermen want it cut back, then we have to decide what gets cut out of the advertising for the fiscal year 13. So it's a pretty heavy process. I mean, it's intense. It's tax dollars, so you have to make sure that you're spending it efficiently and effectively. And it's methodical. That's the boring part, is the numbers. But
Is this group going to get a report on what the tourism tax commissioners recommend their budget be allocated to?
I can provide that.
Okay.
I can provide that.
I think it's kind of an essential piece of information if you're trying to craft a cohesive
Yeah.
marketing program.
Right.
Sorry.
Dateline, sick duty.
It's time to open the Welcome Center. That's what that tells me. So yeah, I can bring that. But for fiscal year 13, we don't have one yet. So I mean, that'll all be done together simultaneously.
Just smiling at the
Relatively.
redundancy of that statement.
I know. It will be worked upon at the same period of time for fiscal year 13. So I can bring in the recommendations, but until the tax commission actually approves any expenditures, there isn't anything that has been allocated. That's the other side of that. So are there any questions? Yeah, any of that makes sense? The fiscal year for the tax commission is the same as the city. So it's October to September.
It might be nice for somebody like me who's never dealt with any of this before if we could maybe see a couple of things from last year that what the tax commission did allocate and approve, and so maybe we can just see a little bit of history of what has been done before, and then we can talk about if anything does need to change, what we could change in that.
Certainly.
Thanks.
Does the county place any restrictions on the use of their money?
They approve the budget I send them a plan of action. They've only funded marketing for the city twice, last year and this year. They did have stipulations on last year's funding. This year, they did not maintain those stipulations, but they were provided with a budget grid of where their money was going to be spent.
Last year, the requirement was that it be spent to promote something in the county versus in the city. So you met that obligation.
So is that the intention this year too? When you provided them with,
I did not.
you didn't stipulate that?
Wouldn't
They
have
didn't,
got
they didn't put any specifications. It was more of where the advertising was to go. But almost all of my ads promote the county. And we talked about the wineries.
Mhm.
Golf course is a little bit more difficult to advertise and promote. You know, we have a golf course, but, yes, you didn't know that? I know you knew that. But all of the advertising it has in the copy that we use, we include the wineries, and then our recreation obviously is a big draw with our state parks and that. So there is advertising, or there is mention in all of the advertising. And the more that we have to offer, there's not any one single attraction that's going to bring people in. They're looking for a total package. And so I try to advertise that St. Genevieve as that total package, that it has stores and the history and the wineries and, you know, the outdoor recreation. I try to tie that in. And that also helps when it comes to the state reviewing our advertising and our certification as the designated marketing organization. We have to show that we promote, even outside of the co-op, that we still promote the county.
I think everybody buys into that. At the Landmarks workshop yesterday, Jan made a statement that I thought was really telling. And he said, you know, when I decided to invest in bed and breakfast in St. Genevieve, there were no wineries. And he was saying that he found value in the opportunity without the winemaking industry. And we all thought, boy, did you get lucky? Because it's had such a big impact on his business. So we can't be parochial. We can't just think about Main Street, because what we have to offer goes beyond the limits of the city.
Did that answer your question? Okay. Any other questions? Thoughts? Okay. Don't have any old business? Since we're
They didn't
brand
exist
new,
yesterday.
yeah. So we'll go ahead and get started with new business.
Is that the end of the financial report?
Yes.
Can I reopen that?
Certainly.
Could we talk about the local option use tax collection report?
Okay.
My understanding is this is the bed tax.
No, it's not.
It's not.
No, that's for internet purchasing, is what I was informed, because I didn't know what the local use was. Sue had explained that that is a tax that's collected.
It's a tax that's collected whenever somebody buys something from a catalog or over the internet.
I understand that, but I'm trying to remember, because I've seen references to the bed tax in St. Genevieve City being referred to as the local option.
That may just be a
Cycle.
or just an unfortunate coincidental use of the word. But for financial reporting, that dollar amount, which has been declining for the last 5 years, I might add, is from those sales other than by someone who has a physical premises.
How do you get that?
Same way any sales tax is collected. The person who makes the sale is obligated to do it and report to the state, and the state makes the distribution based on the source of the sale.
Then I would guess that the decline is caused by the increase in purchasing online because of so many states not collecting tax.
I informed the Board of Aldermen last night about this trend, because we went from $141,000 a year to what might be $90 this year, and it's just not good. And they attributed it to just the general decline in the economy and fewer things being purchased. I don't know if that's the reason why it has gone down. My concern was that we were at a work session, was how do we influence it? I mean, we've got a trend, and is there anything we can do that would reverse the trend? The problem is, as has been pointed out, it's a self-reporting issue. And I don't want to get too academic about this, but every time you pick up your landline and make a telephone call, you create a tax event for the city, because the city gets a utility tax. every time you pick up your wireless phone, we may or may not realize any benefit from that. But the wireless companies are just as obligated to pay the utility tax, we think, based on a recent court ruling, as is AT&T. We just don't have the mechanism to police it. And so it's the same thing with this. It's a self-reporting system, and if somebody's not reporting their Missouri sales to the tax commission, maybe they'll get caught, and maybe somebody will make an example out of them. I don't know how to influence it.
But this is nationwide.
Not every state has an excise tax. Or
Most states don't.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm asking. I mean, this is not Missouri. This is statewide, nationwide purchase.
I don't know what you're looking. What's he looking at?
The 2%.
Local option.
If you have an internet business and you sell a product to a Missouri resident, you're supposed to record that with the state of Missouri.
So this is within state lines? Okay. Well, final thought was, since I was under the misunderstanding about what this was, I would like to ask if we could get the bed tax report as part of the transaction.
I will tell you that I've been following it for 20 years now on the internet, and what you will get from the state will not match what we actually collect here in St. Genevieve. And to be more clear and concise on this, the state will show we had sales of, let's say, $1 million for the bed tax, and we will have collected $1,100,000 times 2%. So we've never complained to the state because we collect more money going into the actual fund that's collected and put in our treasurer than what the state shows. I don't know the reason. I don't know why, because Jan and I both file our taxes with the state. And we get, of course, a deduction of 2% for what we file. But even if you, so do the people that pay the taxes here in town. So what I'm saying is, we will show that revenue-wise, if you took the amount of money that was shown that we took in lodging-wise, and that's all the lodgings in the city of St. Genevieve, which I think there are 11 and 12 now, that it will come up to, let's say, $900,000. And if you took 2% of that, you know, of what the total gross revenue was, that's what we get in the thing. It would be less than 20,000. We always get more than 20,000. So anyone can do that. If you would like, I'll give you the code. You can go out there. It's public information. You can check on St. Charles. You can check on Perryville. The two codes that are the tourism codes are 70 and 58. One of them is lodging. The other one is food and beverage. And food and beverage means a restaurant or a restaurant service. I don't know how they break that down at the Country Mart, because the Country Mart has a restaurant within it. So I don't know whether they separate it out or not.
Should I call a restaurant?
Yeah, call up there and ask one of those girls that works the counter, where are you filing your taxes? So I don't know whether that's incorporated, but it is a restaurant service, and they're supposed to file them separately. But like the Brick, her place where she is, all of those that are really restaurants, which also takes in food and beverage, and they don't separate the beverage out because we're not collecting a tax on it. And if they did, it wouldn't be separated out anyway. So you can see what was done. And I will say this, and I know this for a fact, that there is a bed and breakfast, a lodging in St. Mary, and it has never shown up under any category under state tax rolls.
They won't, because there's less than 6. if there are less than 6, they won't show, when you pull those reports, because I've been working on this. When you pull those reports, if there are less than 6 firms for a specific budget line, they do not put that money out. If I come here and see Sue, I cannot see how much sales tax or tax a specific business pays. I don't have access to that. So with the state, they just kind of give lump numbers. I can't go and say.
They don't classify it under food and beverage or under lodging. They just classify it probably under sales. But if you go to sales, the largest sales in St. Mary is, of course, the mall. And if you look up the malls, their sales are less than one of our smaller bed and breakfasts.
That should be in lodging.
It should be in the lodging because they're supposed to file it under that because they are a lodging. But I don't know the answer. And like I said, I don't want to open that can of worms because we are getting more money than what we're showing to the state. So I don't know where people are filing that money. But we're getting our share, and we're getting more than what the state is ever showing. But you can go out and look at those. I gave it to Martin.
Yeah, and my recommendation is if you want access to this information, ask him to send the link to you because
it's difficult.
Yeah.
I gave it to, I also gave it to the.
And that way you can just save it as a favorite
Herald,
and go back to it rather than having to.
You can follow it, you can look up any city or community, and you can do it by county. You can show the county. When you look at the counties, you're saying, okay, because we know there's a huge motel here in the county, and their sales are pitifully poor. So I don't know where it's going. But I'm not concerned about them. I'm only concerned about the city of St. Genevieve because that's who, I'm in that tax commission, and that's where I'm concerned about. And we're better than what the state shows. But you can look up anything. You can look up any community you want and see how we compare.
Can I give you my email to send me that one?
Okay. By the way,
Thanks.
I must apologize, and especially to you, Stephanie. I lost my email. Like anyone else, got mad at AT&T, and I lost everything. I lost all my connections, my contacts.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, for 2 weeks I was driving twice a day up to the library.
So you got mad at him before that happened or
No,
because that happened?
What happened
And how did
was
they know you were
they
mad?
talked me into going to UVerse, okay? And I was at DSL, which was 6 megabytes. And I didn't want to do that. I don't do graphics. I don't do anything to meet the faster speed. And so they said, well, we're going to send this to you for free. We're going to do this for free. And I got my first bill, and it was $200. And as a communications company, they really do suck. Yeah, I talked to 5 people, and I said to them, this account is tied to a phone where there is no phone on that line. It's my fax, it's my internet, and it's my card processing. There's no phone. You cannot call me back on that. 5th person, I got lost. Waited a week, went back through 4 people, got to the 5th one. Finally, that lady said, yes, that's wrong. If you pay us $32.95, I said, I'll go right online while we're talking. I'll pay you. It'll solve that. Okay. A week later, I get my bill, and it's $225. Not even showing the $32.95. 2 days later, they cut me off. I called them up, and I said, I've been with you for over 50 years. I've never paid a late fee. I've never been late, but I have had problems. And I said, where do you think I came up with the $32.95? Well, I don't know. I said, well, find somebody in the company that told you that. I've talked to people in Ohio, Florida, Texas, Michigan.
Been there.
So he said something that really upset me, and I said, you know what? Excuse my English. Roll this into a cylindrical shape, bend over, and insert it. And right there, my internet went down, and it never came back up.
Had their finger on the button.
So I have Charter, so I contacted Charter, and it took them about a week and a half to get me set up because the line coming to my house was put in 1995, which would not support internet. Had to run a new line to the house. I got it. Do you know this is, and they were at $53 when they told me it would still only be $24. I'm paying $20 now, $19.99, and it is so fast you would not believe it. It's way faster than their U-burst. I mean, it is the fastest thing I've ever seen. But it took me about a week, almost 2 weeks to get connected back up. So I was driving up to the, I mean, I got to be a regular up there with all the kids, you know, trying to do my business. But if you go to mike@southernhotelbb.com, you'll get me. I've never lost that. That I own because it's my website. So I'm sorry about that. But I will give you this thing if you want. I'll tell you exactly what it is. I'll paste it and you can find out what it is. Yeah, I'll give it to you. And it's so neat that, and the codes, I'll also give you some codes for the cities, because every city has its own codes, and every county has its own codes. And so, once you get into that and you see what ours is, and then you start looking around about the ones above us and below us, and you'll go, oh, yeah, this is easy. I can go down and find St. Mary, I can go find Perryville, I can find Farmington, I can do St. Charles, you know, I can do everything. You're gonna find out that, for one thing, St. Charles is very wealthy. They passed a 5% in the county and a 5% in the city for lodging tax. So if you live in the city, you voted for 5% for the county, which is also being charged, and a 5% for the city. They implemented the 5% for the county, and they've implemented another 0.75%. So we have 2%, and we can't go any higher. And they, because of their size, and that they have 5 3/4 right now, but they also have a 1% for food and beverage, and they do $100 million a year on food and beverage, so they get $1 million, 1% on just that one. But anyway, I'll give you all this. Anybody that wants them, it's definitely like it. I know your email. I'll send you that. That's
Oh, I already have it.
You got it. Okay.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no, I actually have all the recording. Done. So, all right, so I know some folks have some things they have to go run and do and business to take care of. So let's go ahead, I guess, move on to new business. Need to elect a chair and a vice chair.
Floor is open for nominations. Volunteers? Victims?
Yeah, I was just thinking that.
I don't know enough yet.
We have a volunteer? Bob raised his hand, he volunteered. Okay.
What are you
Any
volunteering
other
for,
nominations?
Bob?
For
What
what?
are you volunteering?
For chair.
The chair.
Do we have any other nominations? Nominations are hereby closed. All in favor of Bob Mueller being the chairperson of the Tourism Tax Commission, signify by saying aye. What?
Advisory.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Advisory Council.
We are taking minutes this one.
Signify by saying
Carla knew
aye.
she was
Aye.
Opposed? Congratulations. Now you get to do the vice chair thing.
Open nominations for vice chair. Any volunteers?
I am not near knowledgeable enough.
You don't have to run the meeting. You don't have to be knowledgeable, do they?
Hey, it's just
Just
Following
Robert's
an
Rules of
agenda.
Order, is all you have to know.
Yeah, right.
All right. I'll be your vice chair.
Any other nominations? All in favor of Dina being the vice chair, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Thank you
Motion
both.
carried.
Congratulations.
Look good on your resume.
Okay, floor's yours, Bob.
Okay, you do have the bylaws in your package. I would suggest that you read them carefully. I know they put a lot of work into these. We'll do that here. We'll come back. And if you have any questions at the next meeting, one of the things that we have to have per the bylaws is an annual meeting, and we have to designate one of the months where it is called the annual meeting. I guess my suggestion would be to have that as annual designation sometime after the elections.
After the elections, which elections?
Well, there's elections in April, I guess. Is it November? When would the mayor be elected?
It's in April.
In April. Sometime after that, to give that mayor, if there's going to be new appointments each year, and I think you would give that new mayor the opportunity to make such appointments if they so choose. And so I guess I'd recommend something like June or something, give that new mayor time to make appointments or whatever that they wanted to do or she wanted to do.
The only difference between an annual meeting and a regular meeting is the election of officers. Other than that, at any regular meeting, you can change bylaws or recommend to change bylaws or whatever you want to do. But you have to elect officers.
Would June sound reasonable to do that?
But you're going to be meeting monthly, so one's as good as another. And I think that rationale makes a lot of sense.
All in favor of June being designated as the annual meeting? Say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? June shall be the annual meeting. Meeting day and time. I know that it's going to be difficult with a group this large to set a time. I know some of you run businesses and have to be at various places. Traditionally, I guess the other Tourism Advisory Committee was on Fridays also.
Yeah, third Friday of the month at 9 a.m.
9 a.m. Is 8 better, or 9, or 9:30? What would be most convenient for people?
Well, speaking for myself, the better the season gets, the less likely I'm able to do 8 o'clock.
Same here.
Would 9:30 be a more appropriate time? I know some of you have businesses
Mm-hmm.
that
Works for me.
Steph, is that something that?
That
Yeah.
works for me.
So why don't we choose the third Friday?
Excuse me, I'm sorry. We do have a tourism tax commission meeting that is scheduled at 9:45 on the third Friday.
That can be changed.
Okay.
That's up to us to change our meeting.
Okay.
And what we did with the Tourism Tax Commission prior to this, and we may or may not choose to do it, was the Tourism Tax Commission was calling their meeting at a time that overlapped the Tourism Advisory Council meeting. So it went straight from the Tourism Advisory Council into the Tourism Tax Commission. And the idea was that someone, who was interested in tourism, if they got here for the Tourism Advisory Council meeting, that would be okay. Problem with that is that the Tourism Advisory Council meetings were going sometimes long. So, people who are here for the Tourism Tax Commission meeting were then waiting until 11 o'clock sometimes before that meeting got started. So I don't know how you feel about that, Mike.
It really depends on her agenda, what she sends out, how big it is. That if we saw that on like a Monday, we could schedule our meeting to be, if there's a lot on the table, we could schedule it to be a little later, but to overlap a little bit. In other words, if you meet at 9:30 and she's got a hell of an agenda, which she will have at certain times of the year because of the things that she's presenting, then we would just schedule ours to come afterwards, but instead of at 10 or 10:30, we would make it at 11, which would probably overlap because it usually takes an hour.
Yeah,
an
well,
hour and a
the
half.
only issue you have is a notice issue.
Yeah.
And you can, and to me, that was kind of the problem we were faced with.
Making the notice.
We were doing a public
presence in the
notice
public,
for a meeting
yeah.
that wasn't happening until an hour after it was
Yeah.
noticed.
So we'll just make ours specifically start at, let's say, 10:45, which gives an hour and 15 minutes.
Yeah, but if the meeting runs long, what if we were to put the tax commission, it's just an idea, maybe the second Friday, and have it, or the fourth Friday, and have it.
Well, let me talk to the commissioners and see.
Well,
what's-
that's what I meant.
Yeah.
One of the goals was
Yeah.
Put it together.
to not have so many days committed to meetings.
We have a problem with the tax commission in the event that we don't always have a quorum, because Jack and I and Shirley are usually here in town, but we have if we're not, we sometimes don't have a quorum because the other two are working, and they're out of town. So we'll call for a meeting and see what we can come up with.
Jim and who else?
Jim Ferguson and Mike
Mike Delaney.
Delaney, but
Oh.
Mike's due to be replaced.
Yeah, his term is up.
His term is up.
That was quick.
Well, he was only for 1 year and 3 years. You can only serve 2 terms.
And he's a good board member. I mean,
Yeah.
I hate to lose him, but, you know, he's taking a job elsewhere and he's not available to attend meetings. It's kind of hard to.
So we're gonna go with
9:30.
9:30 and the third Friday? Like, is that what we're saying?
Carl, I wonder if you could put together a listing for the committee on name, address, phone number, cell,
I have
email.
it started on there, and I will
Yeah,
make sure
so
that
that everybody
everybody
gets
gets copy
that.
on it.
One of the other things that when you read the bylaws, there can be ad hoc committees and there can be some standing committees. Standing committees have to be approved by the board. At the next meeting, I will probably come in with some recommendations for some standing committees related to things like electronic advertising, print advertising, tourism development, and planning, grants, things about finance, that maybe we can split up some of the work and then have short committee reports when we have our meetings. So do read the bylaws. I think it's important to know, as Martin said, what we're about, and then those rules that control how we act. Director's report? Anything?
Kind of already went through the director's report, just to kind of, I'll go through it again real quick. On our web report, the Google Analytics showed we had increase on the number of page views, pages per visit, and average time on site. Those are all important numbers, especially the average time on site. The longer someone stays on your website, the more likely that they're going to book a room or they're going to come and make a visit, because they're wanting to get as much information as they can about the town. So to have that average time on site growing longer is positive. Number of foot traffic, visitors to the Welcome Center has increased. For the month of February, we were at 20% over last year. A lot of this, I think, has to do with the weather. It has been a very mild winter. Hopefully, we are not going to have a very hot summer. But those numbers are going well. We don't have any passport sales at this time because we have 2 of the houses that are either closed or have limited times. So we discontinued. We plan on beginning the sale of passports on April 1st, March 31st. So we will have those available. Or, we'll start seeing that funding come in probably in May when I do the April report. And then the expenses are down. The biggest reason with the expense difference is that there's not as much advertising for the winter months. So that's the largest decrease from 2011 to 2012. And then now that we're moving in, everything is now scheduled to start increasing. So I have the bills will start coming in for the grant and for the summer advertising as it starts. And then we don't have anything scheduled as far as events until the last weekend in April, the 27, 28, and 29. That will be the École de Soldat. And I have been working with those gentlemen to get everything set up and ready for them. They have a display in the Welcome Center, and hopefully we don't have another huge windstorm like we had last year, which their tents survived. Our modern new tent wound up in a tree.
At that time, it wasn't ours.
No, at that time it wasn't ours. It's now ours as a result of winding up in a tree. So they're all set and ready to go. Spoke with Dave with the street department, and he's going to get their requirements, firewood and whatnot together. So they're ready to go. And other than that, is there any questions? Are there any questions? Yes.
I haven't looked at the website to see if this has already been addressed, but if not.
Could you guys at the Welcome Center maintain a page that tells whether the ferry's up that day? And given that the house
committees evaluate their situations throughout the year, and the wineries, at least one winery is going to change what they did this year, what they're going to do this year compared to last year. Like, when did they go to summer hours? They're going to open at noon or 11. You know, that stuff just keeps changing. If you could keep that current,
Well,
check
there's
it every week.
a few things that are going to make that very difficult. One, our website is a flash. It's not CMS. So making changes requires writing code. To set up a page, it's going to cost money. And does the city want to pay for a web page for, I guess, a private business?
Well, you've already answered the question. We don't need to go any further than that.
Well, but that doesn't mean change can't occur.
You know, one thing that
Can we change the format of our website so we can edit it?
Yeah, I would think. There's nothing worse than what I just heard you say. I mean, I've fought that battle a million times myself, you know, and I just get away from it. I dump people like that.
Yeah, well, and the city,
ISPs, I mean.
yeah, the city doesn't have control over the website.
No. See.
But we're probably going in that direction. I mean, it was a grant that the chamber got. And then the chamber put up the Visit St. John website, and the chamber has employed the person who's maintaining the website. And I don't know what cost would be involved to make that kind of meaningful change, but certainly something that can be looked at.
Well, I think flexibility in web administration is paramount importance.
One thing that I have been trying to do is make sure that when there is an issue with the ferry, that the voicemail message is changed, that I put notice out on Facebook and Twitter, because that's what I can do for now.
Yeah.
And that's how I can provide notice. And that has helped.
Can you put it on the calendar?
Possibly, but I don't know many people that would go to the events calendar to see if the ferry is running. And I don't know, well, you know, and that might even be something that I would have to talk to the web committee to see, since it's not an actual event, could it go on the calendar? Because it's an event calendar.
You know, it isn't an event, a discrete event, but for many people, the ferry is a tourist attraction. So I think something could be done.
Well, while you're on it, put the rates up too, because their rate sheet is like 12, 15 items, different possibilities.
We would have to have that on there for every single day for the event calendar.
Yeah, it'd be difficult with what we have today, because the administrators, it's complicated.
I'd forgotten that was the situation.
But it's I think, legitimate suggestion that should be investigated. If we can't do it right away, maybe make some future.
Can you set up a page like you're talking about doing for us or Airbnb? Set up a page for the ferry?
That would cost, I believe, $100.
$300. It would be cheaper than what you're talking about with all this coaching and everything. If you do it one time.
But the city's not going to cover that cost. Why would, we wouldn't cover the cost? I mean, each of the pages that are set up.
I bet the ferry would cover that.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
Well, the levy district.
Pardon?
The budget for the ferry comes out of the levy district. No, Port Authority.
I bet if you ask Ron Emmett, he'd get covered.
I think he might.
And it is a tourist attraction.
You
Does anybody know how many
could put a
ferries
link-
there are? I asked this question yesterday.
You could put a link to the cities. The cities, isn't run that way.
No, we don't. The city's a different
So you
administration.
could put a link on there for ferry information, you know, a link just on the home page or something. And then you could change anything you wanted on this, and link it to the city's website. And then she could have changes, you know, submit changes to that very easily, where you don't have to go through all that rigmarole.
But would a person coming in to see it as an attraction, would they have knowledge of where to find that?
Well, if it was on the home page of the tourism site,
An icon or something.
some icon that said ferry
Right.
information, or,
With the link to go back to the-
Just creating a link is what you're saying.
or
Yeah.
shop information or
Yeah.
something like that, if you did that, and then you could say, you know, that whatever you wanted on your own website, which is St. Genevieve City's website.
Right. When we need,
And make changes to that as often as you like, because it's much easier for you to make the changes to that one.
right. Well, now that Dina's gone, I don't know, is that something that, to put a link? I know at one time to put a link on the tourism advisory, I'm not, the tourism website, you had to get approval from the website committee.
Okay.
I don't know, well, I'm
It
asking,
might
I
be
don't
easier
know.
getting that approval than, you know, to go to the cities. And I would, you know, I know how these things work. The more links you have on a particular website to other websites, the higher you are on Google or
And-
any other
Well,
analytical.
we're going to have to make a decision about who's paying for and who controls this website in this fiscal year, or this next fiscal year. So I think all, these are great points, but maybe if we just sit on it until we start our budget process and the city takes over the website, which I think is what's going to happen. Because right now, we're paying the chamber beyond our regular contribution to the chamber. We're writing them a check so they can hire somebody to run our website. I understand how it evolved, and I'm okay with it. But right now, I think is the time to say, well, wait a minute. If I'm going to write the check, then I want that person accountable to me, the city, and then we will be in control of deciding what format and who's administering it and what can be changed and what can't be changed. And I think it's time to make that transition, and then we can put whatever we want. So if that's okay, if you don't mind, just kind of tabling it for the time being, and then look forward to resolving all of these issues when we change from chamber to city. Okay?
Sounds good to me.
Well, there's nothing to link it to right now except the city website.
Right.
Yeah, any website should have the capability to remain fluid. I mean, you're always going to have changes and things pop up, and so it should have that functionality to be able to put announcements on at a moment's notice or whatever. I don't know what you've got now.
It seems to be very complicated getting anything.
It is complicated.
It is.
And
Doesn't have to be.
people who should be
I think it's
Well,
controlled.
deciding it don't have.
The reason why it got complicated is that the tax commission bought the domain name, because I paid for those, because I was treasurer at the time. And Andy wanted control of that, because all we had up there, because there was no funds to build a website, was a mirror image of another website. And so then they got a grant, the chamber got a grant of $26,000, basically, somewhere in that neighborhood. I mean, there was other grants for marketing and logo and branding and things like that, but they came up with 26 to build the website. So the chamber got the grant to build the website, so they invested their time and effort and their grant money in building a $26,000 website, which is a really great website.
Well, it better be for that amount.
Well, it took a lot more than what you thought. They had to bring people down from the University of Missouri, because when you get grant money, you don't just get to spend the money how you want to.
Mhm.
You have all these parameters, so you have to go through, you want to spend their money, you go through their hoops. That's the way it always is with grant. And then you have to spend the money before you get the money back. That's another thing that she didn't say anything about, because, you know, basically, to clarify what she said, you're going to have a $50,000 that's going to be a grant money, 25 from the city and 25 for that you're going to be important enough that you're going to have some say about how that next grant is going to be written for 2014. That's what this group is going to help her do. Also, you're going to have the $25,000 that the city gives her to spend, which isn't part of the grant. That's another 25. And then if you come to and the 5,000 along with that came from the county, so that's 30,000. If you came to the meeting of the tax commission, you would have input into what we give to her and how we expect her to spend our money, which is, right now is 17,500. So you could be a part of spending what amounts to almost $80,000 in marketing. 50 and 30 is 80, and then the other 17 that we do as a tax commission. So you see it's over $100,000, or right at $100,000, which you would be part of to help her decide where she should spend the money. But you don't get that money until, unless, in the grant, until you actually pay the bill. And you meet all of their specifications and have to follow all their rules, which are very, very hard to do. And that's what happened when we got money to build the website.
And that's, I was on the website committee.
Yeah.
And
I
there
was too.
there were actually two things that happened. One was the development of the St. Genevieve brand and Swish, and that.
Yeah.
And then subsequent to that, there was a grant from the Community Foundation. It wasn't from the state.
No, it wasn't from
Anybody
the state.
St. Louis.
But there was 10 from the state, though, wasn't there?
No, there was, I think, a private donation.
Oh, that's right.
From a business here in St. Genevieve. So that was how the website got developed. It wasn't that full.
So that wasn't all for just the programming of the site, there was a
Right.
lot more involved in
Oh,
creating
God, yeah.
the brand in
Yes.
it, okay.
Yes.
Okay, well, that makes sense.
There were at times as many as 15 people at the meeting on the web committee. And I'll give you, for instance, the people that came from the school wanted to be able to access that site and make changes for everything that happened. A football game coming up, a tennis game coming up, a golf game, all of their scores. And so you don't have one person that does that from the school. You have the guy that does tennis, you have the guy that does basketball. And you would have, just from the school alone, you would have maybe 15, 20, 30 people, the French committee, wanting to make changes. And so they had to make rules that you couldn't do that. You couldn't have, as many as 100 people submitting changes to it. It just didn't work. So that's why it came down to being very complicated, that only one or two people can make the changes. I can't make changes. He can't make changes.
Nobody can make changes, that's what I'm hearing.
That's not true.
But you
It's-
can.
That is not true.
You can submit those things, and they'll do them.
On the third, or the last Thursday of the month, you can submit everything before that. And that was the understanding that
Yeah.
then Stephanie would contact the website designer and make those changes.
So thank you.
I
They-
was,
but
I
they-
was restricted to addresses, phone numbers, emails, that information.
We have sent in changes, I've sent them in personally, and I know that those changes, you forward those changes on, they've been made.
The ones that come from you.
They are not, they're,
I mean, I've requested to have Joseph Sisters taken down several times, and they're still on the website. I can't do it because you have to program it out. And so
I think we
there's-
wait and resolve these issues.
I agree.
That,
Next
we'll
fiscal
hear all
year.
kinds of stuff, not all of it is exactly how things are. I think we have a good, the website's very good. We do need to have the ability to modify it ourselves, put things up. The website committee said that from the beginning. I think your people have to have the capability to make those little changes that are going on. It's not designing the whole website and things like that. And we've never been able to get to that position. But I would recommend that anyone that has information on a website, like the B&Bs and the houses, that if you get one changes, you submit them to Stephanie. And I hope this committee resolves some of those issues that, and frustrations with the website that's gone on over the last year. Because I think it is a great website. We've got a lot of good information. We've had a lot of good press about the website. It has to be maintained. It has to be accurate. It's just like everything else. You look at visitmo.com. We got places on there that are out of business.
And have been out for 5 and 10 years.
It's not good, and it takes a little bit of effort to get those things off of there. So,
Well, I have to say, I didn't mean to open a can of worms. I didn't realize there was frustration. I now have that frustration, I have to tell you.
And you need
Because-
more frustration.
And right, and I change my website every week because Google likes changing. And if you're not keeping the current Google's
We
dropping
need,
you.
and we need links,
Right.
a little icon that we can give to every business in town to link to our tourism website. That's how we're gonna get better hits and better hierarchy on Google and Yahoo. But that's one of the committees that I think that we probably should, is electronic media develop. So I'll be coming back to you on that.
So over the last 5 or 10 years, I've enjoyed sitting in meetings where you're spending time discussing things in a language that didn't exist 8 years ago. Now we get a kick out of it.
Is there any other new business to be brought before the committee?
I have a question.
Yes.
In the bylaws here, on the first page, Section 2, limitation, says we shall not participate in campaigns or support the election or appointment of any candidate for public office. Does that mean I need to take down the signs in my yard?
I took mine down.
Okay.
Is that typical language in all of your bylaws?
Yep.
It was an attempt to depoliticize the Tourism Advisory
And
Council.
that suggests that we all abide by that.
I don't know what my husband will say.
Well,
Sometimes he puts us on.
I'm not going to tell you you have to take your sign down. I'm going to tell you that as a Tourism Advisory Council member, you should not represent yourself as a Tourism Advisory Council member in the support of any political campaign. I can't restrict your freedom of political speech. I'm going to put a sign up. Put a sign up. But
Then I'm confused by the bylaws.
no, I mean, I think it's best that we refrain from participating in political campaigns. I just don't think that the city can restrict your political speech by asking you to serve on a campaign. But it's in there, and it's in there to try and make sure that everybody understands that we can't use our positions without jeopardizing the integrity of the Tourism Advisory Council. So yeah, but
We tried to tell that to Lorraine, but she still has vote for Bush on the bumper.
Miss me yet?
yeah, it's just good practice.
Okay, any other questions, new business? Second? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. Jack, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.